Good day, everyone. I'm Captain Ron Irani, and very soon I will be taking a class. But before I begin a class, I have a social message for every one of you. Please do wear a mask at all times. Please wash your hands frequently. Please avoid crowded areas. Please stay at least 2 meters away from others. And most importantly, get yourself and your family members vaccinated. It definitely works in controlling the spread of the coronavirus. At the end of the class, do give a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, as well as click on the bell icon to get instant notifications as soon as something new is posted on my channel. The class that I am about to take is about the Seafarer's hours of work and rest under the Maritime Labour Convention 2006, popularly called MLC 2006. So as per MLC 2006, what are the seafarers' maximum hours of work? Maximum hours of work shall not exceed 14 hours in any 24-hour period, and at the same time shall not exceed 72 hours in any 7-day period. Now, what do we understand by any 24-hour period and any 7-day period? Let us say we take it starting now. Is it going forward until tomorrow and ending at the same time? Or is it going backward and ending at the same time? Similarly, for any 7-day period, is it going forward until next Sunday and ending at the same time? Or is it going backward until the last Sunday that went by, ending at the same time? It will be good to know that we cannot predict the future. We all know that. How many hours we will be working tomorrow, we do not know. How many hours we will be working on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or even until next Sunday, we have no idea. So, this in any 24-hour period and in any 7-day period is always retrospective. That means going backwards. Until yesterday's same time, 24-hour period will end, and until last Sunday, any 7-day period will end. Similarly, for minimum hours of rest, they shall not be less than 10 hours in any 24-hour period and 77 hours in any 7-day period. The hours of rest may be divided into no more than 2 parts, into no more than 2 periods. Remember the word may be, it is not compulsory. May be divided. One of which shall be at least 6 hours long. So if one is at least 6 hours long, the other period will be at least 4 hours long. Anything other than that, 6 and 3, is not acceptable because it does not give you a 10-hour period. But 6 and 4, 7 and 3, 8 and 2, 9 and 1, and 10 and 0 are perfectly acceptable because even though they are broken up into 2 parts, 6, 4, 7, 3, 8, 2, 9, 1, one of them is at least 6 hours long or more. The other part can be less, that is fine, so long as the two add up to 10 hours. Now let me ask you a question. If 6 and 4 is okay, will 4 and 6 also be okay? Similarly, will 3 and 7, 2 and 8, 1 and 9, 0 and 10, will they also be okay? Yes, they will all be okay so long as their total adds up to 10 hours and also so long as they are not broken up into more than 2 periods. Your 10-hour break is not broken up into more than 2 periods. Yet at the same time, I will pose another question to you. Will 5 hours and 5 hours be okay? It's broken up into 2 parts as required by MLC 2006. But neither of them is greater than 6 hours. Neither of them is equal to 6 hours. Hence, the breakup of 5 hours and 5 hours is not acceptable under MLC 2006. Intervals between consecutive periods of rest shall not exceed 14 hours. You have one period of rest and you have another period of rest. One period ended, the other period started. Now this gap between the two, the end of one rest period and the beginning of the next rest period, that gap should not be more than 14 hours. Because if it does exceed 14 hours, your rest hours will not be as per MLC 2006. So let us say if this gap was 15 continuous hours, or even if it is in parts, 2 parts totaling 15 hours, your rest hours will be equal to 9. Short breaks. What does MLC say about short breaks? Short breaks of 1 hour or less during your working hours for meals, etc. are not counted as rest periods. Now it can be meals, it can be coffee break, tea break, smoke break, any short break which is of less than 1 hour duration will not be considered as rest period, but it will be considered as a working period, provided that the meal time and the short breaks time at the very beginning or at the very end of the rest periods will count as rest periods. Similarly, meal times and short breaks at the very beginning or at the very end of your working period will also count as rest periods. Because that one, let us say you have your lunch break from noon to 1300 hours and your shift ends at noon. You are going to report back to work at 1800 hours in the evening. So this 1 hour break that you have, 1 hour lunchtime that you have from 12 to 13 will now be considered as your rest period. As per MLC 2006, what happens in case there is an emergency? Either on board your own ship or if your ship is going to assist another ship in distress, another seafarer in distress. Now that seafarer could be on a yacht, on a fishing vessel, on a sailing vessel, on a rig, on an offshore vessel, on a passenger ship, or even a cargo ship, any cargo ship. During any emergency, your periods of work and rest under MLC 2006 are suspended. You are required to work till as long as is necessary until the emergency is restored back to a normal situation. Now that emergency could be on board your ship, as I said earlier, or you could be going to assist somebody else. The master has the right to suspend your schedule of hours of work and rest if it is an emergency. However, once the normalcy has been restored, then any seafarer whose hours of work and rest were suspended is entitled to get an adequate period of rest. Now let me give you an example. Let us say your emergency lasted 2 full days and you were on your feet for 48 continuous hours. You technically should have got 2 periods of 10 hours duration rest during this time, a total of 20 hours. So once the normalcy has been restored, would you be getting 20 continuous hours of rest? Or would everybody on board be getting 20 continuous hours of rest? The answer is no. The answer is adequate periods of rest. Remember, the ship must always run. This period of rest will be in a staggered mode. Some will rest, some will continue to work, until once again your normal working and rest hours are restored. Now on board cargo ships, there is always, while the ships are in port, cargo going on, loading, discharging, transferring, and seafarers on board were required to keep cargo watches. Before MLC 2006 came about, the cargo watches that the seafarers kept while in port were 6 hours on, 6 hours off. So basically, the second mate would keep midnight to 0600 and then from noon to 1800. And the third officer would keep from 0600 to 12 o'clock noon, and then again from 1800 to midnight. And he would not be alone, there would be other watchkeepers doing the same watchkeeping timings. Now once MLC 2006 came about, it was noticed that while your hours of work and hours of rest were in accordance, that is, you had worked less than 12 hours and you had your rest more than 10 hours. But there was a flaw in this system. And the flaw was this. If you take the case of the second officer, let us start. He has worked from midnight to 6 o'clock and then he goes to take rest at 6 o'clock and he resumes work at 12 o'clock. Now, does he actually finish handing over at 0600 hours? Even if the third mate came in at 10 minutes or 15 minutes before time, and the second mate managed to hand over his cargo watch and leave at 6 o'clock. But when he would return for his duty from 12 to 1800 hours, he would also be coming 15 minutes earlier, let us say 11:45. So basically his rest time was from 0600 till 11:45, which makes it 5 hours and 45 minutes, which makes it non-compliant under MLC 2006, because at no point If this pattern is followed for both the second officer and the third officer, will they get 6 continuous hours of rest? So, what was done to ensure that compliance took place in all quarters, in all respects? 14 hours of work maximum, at least 10 hours of rest, and if it was broken up into two parts, the rest periods, one of them would be at least 6 hours long. For the other part, that is 4 hours long, definitely it was complying because two sections of 6 hours, even if it is 5 hours and 45 minutes of rest, it is definitely complying with your 4 hours. But it was not complying with that one long stretch of 6 hours at all. So what was done was a slight modification of their watchkeeping time. Now there was a slight modification done to this pattern of 6 hours on, 6 hours off, as it was found that it was not in compliance with MLC 2006 requirements. The modification that was done was that instead of 6 hours on, 6 hours off, it would now be 7 on, 5 off, 5 on, 7 off. Second officer would keep watch from midnight till 7 o'clock, take a break from 7 o'clock till noon, then work again from noon till 1700 and take a break from 1700 to midnight. The third officer would take a break from midnight to 0700, work from 07 to 12, take another break from noon till 1700, and then work again from 1700 till 2400, midnight. In this pattern, it was seen that all stipulations of work and rest were complied with, including the rest period being broken up into two parts, and including that one part of this must be at least 6 hours long. Another pattern was 5 on, 7 off, 7 on, 5 off. Basically, it's the same pattern. Only thing it depends upon the time at which the ship comes into port and the cargo work is started. So the person who has not had enough rest, second officer and his team, and the persons who have had sufficient rest, the third officer and his team, depending upon who it is, they will take the first watch. The persons who have had sufficient rest will take the first watch. So the second officer will work from midnight till 0500, 5 hours that is. Take rest from 5 o'clock till noon, that is 7 hours. Work again from noon till 1900, that is 7 hours. And then take rest from 1900 till midnight, that is 5 hours. And the third officer, he will take rest from midnight till 5 o'clock in the morning, that is 5 hours. He will work until noon, that is 7 hours, then take a break until 1900, that is a rest of 7 hours, and he will work until midnight, that is 5 hours. So in both these scenarios, the MLC 2006 stipulations are being complied with completely. Now there is a form that is given to each and every seafarer on board when he joins, and this form has to be maintained from the day he joins till the day he disembarks. This form has to be maintained in such a manner that he is well aware of his working hours and rest hours. His head of department is also aware of the rest and working hours of the people under him. The master is well aware of the rest and working hours of everybody on board, as well as the company is well aware of the rest and working hours of all seafarers in their fleet. Now here I would like to point out that even the master as well as the chief engineer must diligently complete their forms of hours of work and rest. In this form, there are many boxes, 24 hours divided into half hour durations, that is 48 boxes. And in these boxes, you mark an X for the hour worked, half hour worked, or you draw a line across for the number of hours and half hour worked. The rest of the boxes where there are no X's or there is no line automatically construes as your period of rest. This form is then given to the head of department on a Sunday or whichever day he chooses so that he can update the system and he can see whether you are complying or not. The master can also see whether each and every seafarer is complying with his rest and work hours or not. And these days, this data is automatically updated to the server in the office ashore, either on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. So the guy who is monitoring it ashore can also make his remarks, ask why there has been non-compliance in case the reason has not been mentioned on the form. Now there can be a port state control inspector or a surveyor from a recognized organization who can come on board and ask to see an individual's form. He may choose 2 or 3 persons at random. The master gives it to him and this gentleman or the lady scrutinizes it to confirm that MLC 2006 requirements for hours of work and rest were complied with. If it is found that it is not complying, then reasons will be asked justifiably. And if it is noted that it is on a regular basis without any justification, then the ship will be penalized. What does this form look like? Looks like something like this. On the left hand side you see a column with the dates, that is from the 1st till the 31st, covering the entire month. Of course, if it is a 28-day month or a 30-day month, the remaining days are not included. It is on a 24-hour basis. Every seafarer has to complete the data on the top. He has to indicate whether he is a watchkeeper or not. And let us say I am the surveyor who comes on board the ship. I go to the master and I request one particular seafarer's data, record of his hours of work and rest. And let us assume today is the 17th. So, as you see, there is a mark over here to indicate today's date. You have every seafarer who completes this form has these indications. Please mark working hours to the nearest half hour below with an X or using a continuous line or an arrow. So basis this, the seafarer starts marking the day. Let us say he starts off on the 10th. He's made his mark. The red indications are for the breaks, lunch break, coffee break. Any break that is less than 1 hour is not considered as a break, as a rest period. It is considered as working time. So this gentleman, this seafarer, has worked from 0600 till 1800. On the 11th, he has maintained the same working time. On the 12th, he's worked from 3:30 till 18:30. So the surveyor says, okay, fine, no problem. Was there any reason? And he looks up over here on the right hand side, he says, remark emergency. The surveyor asks the master, can you explain what was the emergency? The master gives full detail, it is accepted, no problem. On the 13th, this seafarer starts work at 3 o'clock and works until 18:30. Again, the master explains it was because of an emergency that this was done. On the 14th, there is staggered hours of work and staggered hours of rest. So the surveyor asks, what happened now? So the master now explains the emergency got over and the situation went back to normal and everyone was given adequate hours of rest. Naturally, for the 2 days that you were on emergency, you could not ask for 20 hours of rest, 10 hours each day, because the ship then stops working. If everyone goes for a rest, break, so hours of work and rest were staggered. While you were resting, somebody was working. While you were working, somebody was resting. And so on the 15th, it is back to normal time from 0600 to 1800. On the 16th, okay, it's from 5 o'clock in the morning till 1800. Since it is still complying with hours of work and rest, the surveyor does not ask the master for any further explanation. So this is how it works. As you see, you have inspected for the last 7 days. Today is the 17th, and you have inspected from the 10th to the 16th. The surveyor who comes on board can, after he gets this data of a seafarer, recording his hours of work and rest, he can just draw a line, vertical line. Let us say he says, I will check for this seafarer from 7 o'clock onwards, going backwards from the 16th for the last 7 days. And he goes and does exactly what I have explained to you. On a daily basis, he does that now on a weekly basis and sees whether you have been in compliance on a 7-day period. Remember that for 7 days, your work should be how much? 72, not more than 72 hours a week. And at the same time, your hours of rest should not be less than 77 hours per week. At the end of the class, do give a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, as well as click on the bell icon to get instant notifications as soon as something new is posted on my channel.